Hello?
King James?
Good day, sir. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Not bad. Would this be the illustrious Jason Goodman?
You could recognize my voice, I guess?
Absolutely, my friend.
It's good to hear from you again, sir. You know, I got that email from you about why Canada.
Yes?
I was very interested in everything you wrote there. I would love to have you tell me about that in a little bit more detail.
Well, first of all, if I may back up just a little bit.
Sure.
I said, I've been following you guys since the very first time with your meeting with George on the rooftop.
Ah, yes.
And, and I was great interest how the crowdsource movement has actually taken hold and moved forward. And it's really amazed me. Now, I want to say this is totally unlike anything I've ever done. I have never called in. I don't participate in talk shows or radio shows. But I was very interested in, from an outside source looking in at what is happening, because love America, wonderful. I have a lot of good friends that are Americans. I travel. I do business on both sides of the border. The issue is that, from what I see, America's tearing herself apart, and it's too good of a country to do that. So that's why I said, you know what? I'm going to send something to you, and I kept noticing that. Well, what tipped it off, Jason, if I may call you that, sir?
Please,
Jason, what happened was they said, do you know that Hillary Clinton's vacationing in Quebec?
Oh, yeah.
And I thought, wasn't that interesting? Because I know a lot about the Clintons' Quebec friends, and she's actually at the Hovey Manor in North Hartley, Quebec, about 30 minutes from Sherbrooke, and I'm sure she's not alone. I told a good friend today, I said, why would the Clintons, with all their money, why would they be visiting and vacationing in Quebec? And they said, well, there's just 3 letters. And he said, what's that? And I said, called FBI.
You mean it's not the excellent restaurants?
yeah, exactly. I said, up here, you see, they're allowed to do certain things, and they have some very rich and powerful friends. And when I started looking around, it was just interesting. So I wrote you an email, and I thought, well, the first thing is the Clintons came, from what I can find, they came up to Canada, and they did some work with Frank Gustra, the mining magnate from out in BC area. And when you read their nice little story that they put out, it said that Frank just happened to have a plane standing by, and Bill had to go to Mexico, had to get there for a speaking engagement. And that's how their friend, Frank Gustra, became such a close Clinton ally in everything they do around the world. I mean, wherever you see Bill Clinton, you see Frank Gustra.
Right.
And I thought, well, that's really interesting. They must be really good friends.
Right.
So the first thing happened, Jason, was to keep going back to this Uranium One deal, and how they basically used a Canadian company, and they basically sold off. In Kazakhstan, they acquired some other mining assets, and they sold off, 20% of North American uranium.
Yeah.
And for that, they were paid $145 million, and that was quite substantial donation, I would think, to the Clinton Foundation. And the second thing happened was that the Podestas, when you find out, you go look at them. Oh, there's not just John, it's Tony. Where you see one, you see the other. They're intertwined, right? Well, they had a company called Joule International, where a Russian oligarch, billionaire, anyway, they invested $35 million into this Joule International, and the company ended up, just happened to be, John Podesta became chairman a few months earlier. I don't know the exact date, but it's just interesting how a Russian company would, say, well, we just happened to invest $35 million in the company.
Interesting time correlation.
Yeah, and if that was one, sir, my father always said, one thing happens, coincidence. Twice, geez, you're lucky. But when it happens 100 times, I'm sorry, you got to call it fraud.
Yeah.
You just can't be that lucky. So when you find out all these fellas that happened, and I'm surprised that your media doesn't cover it. Like Tony Podesta just he signed a contract with I hope to spell this right, SBER Serber Bank, the largest Russian bank.
Yep.
Signed a contract for all things to lobby against sanctions in 2016.
Wow.
Now they paid him $170,000 in the article. The article goes on to say. And it was, let me see here, it was March 10th, 2017, the hedge guy, Zero Hedge. And it goes on to say in the article that, last year they did $26 million in billings for consulting work. So I would say, that's good money if you can get the work.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's Tony Podesta, and it just keeps coming back and back and back. And then there was a Senate inquiry. I'm going to jump around the timeline, if I may, back on John Podesta when he became working for the Democrats. They asked him, he apparently had to disclose things, and he bought 75,000 shares of this Joule International. And so what they did is when they asked him the question, he said, I have never owned a Russian company, which is true because it's registered in Massachusetts.
Right. So they've got these ways of working around all the thorny regulations.
No question. And then he transfers his shares owned to his adult son, $75,000 on December 20th, 2013, 10 days before he goes into the White House.
Amazing.
So you see how this thing all happened, and the timelines is just very, very strange. So I got off the topic a little bit about the Podestas, but the interesting thing, Jason, is that when you come back and you connect Canada, and you see that the first thing I thought, well, the ports. Okay,
yeah.
You spend all your time looking at the south part of the border. Okay, your Mexican border, but they never look at the northern part of the border.
Right.
And I have history in the shipping and the freight industry a little bit, and I'll tell you a story. I won't say where, but the gentleman came to work for us 30 years ago. I never thought I'd be telling this story, but he was a harbor master for a port, retired. And so he came to work for our distribution business, and I kept talking to him, and he said something one day. And I asked him, I said, do you ever see illegal activities? And he says, happens all the time. And I said, what did you do about it? And he asked me a very strange question. He said, do you have children? And I said, yes, I do. And he said, well, then that's your answer. Because he said, these people don't threaten you. They threaten what's close to you. And he said, my two sons are the closest thing to me. That's when I first came in touch with these so-called rat lines that you talked about. And he asked me a question. And I said, so you're telling me that they ship everything? Yeah. And he says they use Canadian ports because it says you cannot ship to Iran. Well, they'll say, fine, we'll ship it to Montreal, and Montreal will ship it to Germany, and it'll end up to Turkey and ends up over in Iran. So they have these interesting ways to get around it. But the question, he answered my question, the most alarming thing of all, Jason, was that he said, I'm not worried about the stuff we ship over. It's guns and illegal stuff. We know that. It's the stuff they're shipping back. And he didn't elaborate. He led me to believe it was, contraband and drugs and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
He said, that's what I worry about. And here we are 30 years later, we're talking about this. I want to just diverse one second here, if I may.
Sure.
It's hard to believe in this day and age, that George Webb found and other people, that 40 of your ports are owned by, the United Arab Emirates.
Yeah.
Like that is just, well, I'm going to call it treason, but I mean, and here I am saying, I read a newspaper here last, and I've got it right here, dated, it's from the Globe and Mail, and it's dated for, it's dated November 16th, 2016. For sale, 8 Canadian airports and 18 seaports.
Wow.
Okay, so the same thing's being repeated up here.
Those were all sold to Gulf Tainer, or who?
No, they're saying they're being put up for sale. So the Trudeau government is putting them up for sale.
Wow.
So obviously they're following the same modus operandi that's happening down your way.
Right.
It's known up here that there's a lot of illegal contraband being shipped down through Quebec and through into the Dakotas out there, Saskatchewan, and they're using the native reserves and big tobacco shipments, and it's multi-billion dollars worth of business.
Wow!
And it's been going on for years. And so, if they can do that, they can do quite a bit of things. The other thing I wanted to mention to you in my email I was talking to you about was that, and it's not a history lesson. I probably don't want to lecture to your listeners, but
no, it was all very interesting to me. I mean, things about the RCMP being understaffed and things like that. I mean, I don't think too many people knew about all this stuff.
Well, the problem is like everything else, it's budget constraints, and we're a big country with 33 million people now, but and it's impossible to police all the borders. It is. It's just impossible. Right. And so when you mention that, and I'm quite shocked too to find out that one of your people, Ortel was, and like I want to say something like, I'm just an average guy, just want to do the right thing, trying to help where I can. Mm-hmm. You've got some guys there, Becks and Ortels and Lionel, and these people. These people are incredible people with incredible talent. Yeah. I certainly do not possess that ability, but I mean, we all can do our own little thing, and hopefully, you'll eat an elephant one bite at a time. And and what's happening to you is happening to us. Like what affects you affects us.
Yeah.
Now, I want to go through one thing.
Sure.
Before the Great American Empire, the British ruled the seas, and they set up, constitutional monarchies. And you guys say, well, we both have democracies, and I say, yeah, we do. But what you have is a republic, and it came from France, and then the Americans approved upon it with 3 branches of equal government. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm sorry, but a constitutional monarchy doesn't have that. Our prime minister, or any prime minister in that system, yes, he's the head of the country. There's no question. But he's also the head of his party, meaning that he can fire any member he chooses. So can you imagine Donald Trump going down and saying to, pick one.
Chuck Schumer,
you know what?
Adam Schiff.
It has to be his own party. So pick a Republican,
Paul Ryan.
Paul Ryan.
John McCain. John McCain would be number one.
Oh, he'd do that? That's a good one. Mr. McCain, you know what? You're gone.
Yeah,
what do you mean?
Great.
You can't do that to me? He said, yes, you are. You're no longer PC or Republican. Guess what? You sit over there in the independents.
Huh. Oh, I see.
And so what happens is it gives the Prime Minister's office and Prime Minister
unbelievable power.
Very, very powerful.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And then we have the courts, and our courts are the same. Okay, and that's what keeps the checks and the balances.
Okay.
But when you're talking about, they went over to like India used to be that way, and they had several of their countries are all modeled off of Britain. Huh. And what that allows you to do is if you control the Prime Minister's office, you control the country.
Wow.
Because the Prime Minister and his office is the leader of his party, and they don't have to. If he wants to say tomorrow morning, I'm just picking an idea, like we're gonna ban right-hand driving on the streets.
Right.
The Prime Minister, as long as he has the votes because he's the guy who got elected. He's the majority of Parliament, right? Mm-hmm. They pass it.
Huh. That's crazy.
So that's the difference. And the reason I want to tell you that is that, so now, if you're coming to Canada, and you were the Clintons, and you were some other people that like to do other things, you really want to know that, that what we're going to do is not going to be interrupted.
Right.
Okay? Your problem down there is that, maybe the Senate decides to do something, and it has a lot of power. The House of Representatives has. The President does. And there's so many checks and balances. That doesn't exist here. And I wanted your crowdsource to know that. And so if you were somebody, and I'm just picking names, if you were a Rockefeller or a Rothschild or, these people that we talk about being globalists that have a lot of money, you can gain influence a lot easier in a constitutional monarchy than you can in a republic.
Because all you need is the Prime Minister in your pocket.
Well, and the other thing you find out is the prime minister really is a figurehead. It's like everything else. It's grown so much. It's his office. The chief of staff in his office really run it. So, and of course, I get a kick out of this. I mean, I'm you would call Republican, so he in his liberal would be your equivalent of Democrat, and all they try to do is, he's a good guy, good-looking man. They just love to get his shirt off because the women all go googly-eyed every time he, And I heard the other day they said, Trudeau for president. Huh. I said, you got to be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, right.
Because, anyway, let's get back off the topic. But that's what I wanted to understand.
Well, now, wait a minute. Before you get off of Justin Trudeau, do you think he's Castro's son?
I don't have enough knowledge to give you an informed opinion.
Okay.
And I've learned a long time ago that speculation gets me in trouble. So,
of course.
But I will tell you this, is that very strange that, Canada was a nation that traded with Cuba. And when everybody else wouldn't, the Canadians had a great relationship with the Cubans, and it was the number one tourist destination. So we've had a long-standing relationship with the Cubans.
And I mean, there is an uncanny resemblance to the young Castro and Justin Trudeau. It's, I think they should pass a law in Parliament forcing him to grow a gigantic bushy beard and smoke cigars, and we should compare.
Yeah, I'm not going to get me going there, sir. But anyway, and then the next thing I wanted to talk to you about was that, I'm trying to phrase this properly, okay? You need the banking systems. And anything else, what they're doing is they're moving money. You're all talking about these days. They're talking about the blackberries. Okay?
Yeah, right.
And so what happened was here. This is BlackBerry, July 2017. Just released a statement saying the U.S. government has endorsed BlackBerry products that was taken from the Internet Today. Okay, as of July 2017, the National Security Agency of the United States, the largest intelligence agency, has endorsed BlackBerry software for encryption and for text messages. As a result, BlackBerry has gathered approval necessary to sell its commercial encryption service software called SECU, S-E-C-U Suite to members of U.S. governments and other foreign governments. So, there's something about BlackBerry that doesn't make sense. So I dug down a little further, and we have a few little things that are different. We're a lot alike in a lot of ways. We have a few little different things. One of the things up here, we have this thing called the Securities and Exchange Commission. And so I said, I wonder who owns BlackBerry now. So I as you call it, drilled down on it. And on a Form 13F, there's a bunch of people, but one really hit me, and it wasn't a lot of money, but E.L. Brofman, L.P. Rothschild, 1 Preserve Parkway, Rockville, Maryland, 20852.
Owns BlackBerry?
It owns $731 million worth of shares in BlackBerry.
Wow.
Dollars worth.
Wow. What kind of percentage of the overall value of the company does that represent?
I would be guessing. I don't want to hazard a guess.
Well, let's let people figure it out. People will look it up and email it to us. That'll be fine.
They were a huge company at one time. They bled through a lot of cash, and obviously they were making their money from their encryption services. But here's an interesting thing. On this Form 13F, what the Brofman Rothschild LP had to do, they had to break down the percentages of what they do. Canadian law, right? I don't think you have that in America. Well, number one of this fund, 60.61% is financial. That's interesting. The second biggest one at 9.09% is tech. Okay, so they invest in tech. The third one at 6.34% is healthcare. followed very closely by 5.84% of industrial stock. That's what, so I said, you know, these are what the globalists invest in. You know, at least here, that's what that fund is doing. But it was very interesting to say how much percentages they put on the financial market. 60%. Obviously, you know, the old saying, follow the money.
Yeah.
So I just throw that out there. It may not mean anything to anybody, but I thought, well, you know, when you dig down through it, you never know what you're going to come up against.
It's true. It's amazing. I mean, King James, this was really, the email was amazing. This phone call's been great. Let's let people chew on some of this information and see what comes back at us, but we've got to talk again soon.
I would be honored to do that, sir. Thank you very much, and I follow your work. I just want to tell the people, don't give up. It's too important. What you're doing, I believe, is the start of a new system, and as long as you maintain your integrity, and you have good people. You're a lot better than me. You know, I mean, you've had some really good people on as interviews, and you put those quality of people, that will encourage nobodies like me to come forward and say, you know what, I'll throw my voice in too.
Well, I think you're doing a great job. I love what you're telling us, your information's always a pleasure speaking with you, King James, and we'll have you back soon.
Hope so. Have a great day.
All right,
Bye-bye.
I'll speak to you soon. Take care of yourself.